This is
Make It Plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the month when we talk to our friend, the chief economist at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, Chad Stone, with the latest jobs report for June. First of all, Chad, welcome back to Make It Plain. How are you, buddy?
I'm well, Mark. Thanks. How are you?
Just fine. It's okay, folks. Chad and I have been doing this so long. It's okay that when you see a good jobs report, to give Chad credit for it. I almost did the other day. I saw 850. Wow, that's Chad. Now if it's a bad jobs report, don't do it. Don't give Chad any credit for that. But if it's a good one, 850,000 jobs, obviously impressive. Obviously, it makes everybody feel ebullient and good. But Chad always looks behind the surface number, and so we're going to do that now. So Chad, 850,000 jobs, but people should be clear that we're not yet out of the woods, and there's still a lot of ground to be made up from February of 2020, right? That's
true. But 850,000 plus another 15,000 revisions from the 2 months before that. So that's a good number. That's definitely a good number. But we're still 6.8 million short of where we were at the beginning of the pandemic, and really about 9.2 million jobs short of if we'd continued at the trend through 2019. If we continued to grow without a recession, then there'd be more jobs, there more potential jobs. So there's a ways to go, but maybe this is too soon to talk about this. Last time we talked, we had like a 500,000 job report.
Right.
That's pretty good. Maybe that's a standard, but 750, 800,000 is achievable. Might not see it every month, but that's something to shoot for, because then within a year you've caught up, and that'd be fast, very fast compared with the recovery from the Great Recession, which proceeded pretty slowly. And we do have stuff in the pipeline, but there's still people that are out of work, and there's still a ways to go. So we don't want to, and of course there are the ongoing racial disparities. We'd like to get back to high employment faster, because we need the economy to be running really hot, really strong, to get the Black and Hispanic unemployment rates down. They're still going to be higher than the white rate. We have a ways to go to fix that, but we can narrow the gap and get those rates low with continued strong growth.
Yeah, well, no, and you did read my mind. Also, I was going to get to that question, because you and I have always, set a benchmark when it comes to the gains and what would cut into. In the past was recession. This time it's the pandemic, and so I thought about that. I mean, it makes sense that if you stay at this level, I don't know how sustainable it is. It would seem to me, though, it would only continue to go up because everything is reopening. And, we always talk about state and local piece. A lot of that is in education. It seems as if schools are getting ready to reopen for all intents and purposes. That's what it looks like. I doubt that's going to change. So even if that happens, then this should be a very achievable monthly level, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
For a while. As you get closer to full employment, we may start to run into more, people just not going back to jobs like the ones they had.
Okay.
But changes in the economy that have taken place in the meantime may make it a little harder, may make it a little slower to achieve matches between workers and employers when we're really close to full employment. So the last 2 million may be hard to get, but the first 6 we should be able to achieve with growth like we have fairly quickly.
Yeah. And the state and local jobs in terms of education, that will be helpful in this. I'm just curious, and forgive me because I can't seem to see it right now. Was there any significant change, even though it's still June, in the state and local numbers themselves?
The state and local job numbers have been improving. They're still down a fair amount, and education had been dominating. So there've been monthly job gains in education, and that's broadly speaking education, not just teachers, but bus drivers and cafeteria workers and such. So those are improving, but the summer may be slow going, but people will be going back to school in August and September, and the schools are, as you said, they're likely to be really reopening and much more fully, and so they'll need all those support services. So we should expect to see improvements, if not real strong over the summer. Then well, August and September is still part of the summer, but in August and September, yeah.
Right. So that's important to know. You also in your charts, and folks, we invite you as always to follow Chad on Twitter for the full analysis at ChadCBPP. That's on Twitter. I'm gonna commend Chad a little, mess with him a little bit, because see, Chad is an economist. He's a little old school, and he used to write up this full report, but now he does Twitter threads. So he's really hip now, y'all. That's how you check him out now. So he's, contemporary. He's hip. He's doing Twitter threads. Check that out. The official unemployment rate, again, understates the pandemic job loss. Is there any new information in that category from June that you can share with us?
The official unemployment rate edged up to 5.9% in June, but the misclassification of workers because of the problems with the survey that we used to estimate the unemployment rate, that's pretty small now. And the other thing that makes the unemployment rate misleading is that there's been a lot of exit from the labor force. In order to be considered unemployed and counted in the unemployment rate, you need to be actively looking for work in the past 4 weeks before at the time of the survey. And a lot of people in the pandemic dropped out of the labor force entirely and were not looking. And so if we look at the difference between what the size of the labor force is in fact and what it would have been without those dropouts, that adds a couple of percentage points to a measure of the unemployment rate that's more realistic. So the realistic rate is higher because it takes into account the fact that there are people who may eventually get back into the labor force looking, but have not yet.
Yeah. More MIP after this message. And then we also know that the number of long-term unemployed is 4 times higher than it was in February of 2020. You have 4.6 million people, as you document, working part-time and involuntarily part-time, working fewer hours than they would have liked. And we're still looking at the job losses it being largest in low-wage industries. And I don't know how soon you can compute the numbers, but are we able to tell, or how soon might we be able to tell, when we look at a month like June, how many of those jobs, the 850,000 gained, are in some of those low-wage industries? I don't know how soon that computes itself, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, the poster child of job losses and of low-wage industries is the leisure and hospitality sector, especially eating establishments, restaurants, and bars. And they went way and hospitality, hotels. They went way down in April of 2020, and they came back pretty quickly halfway. But still, they were a big down sector. They've been creeping back, and they have been contributing to job gains month by month. But there's still a hole there in low wage jobs, but it's nowhere near as big as it was in April of 2020.
Yeah. Looking at workers of color, those who have lost jobs, so some of those numbers look a little bit better, especially when we talk about Black women, because they suffered the largest number of losses during the pandemic, and that is now, since June has come in, is now down to 7.4%. I don't know whether it was last month or the months before. It was up in the 8 percentage points.
Yeah.
So, and then I think some of the others, if I'm not mistaken, have come down as well, haven't they?
Yes. So these are adults. These are 20 years and over, broken down by race and sex. And through most of the pandemic, it's been the case that white workers were doing better than Black and Hispanic, and that's still true. And for most of the pandemic, it was that men were doing better than women, and that's largely true. It's a little different among Asian Americans, but these are job losses since February, since the beginning of the
Right.
recession that we're talking about. And what's really striking this particular month, which is statistically probably some statistical noise, is that Black men are not very far below where they were in February of this month, whereas this is the first time that it's been that close, and it may reverse in the next month because of statistical noise. But if I'm recalling right, they have very small job losses relative to February of 2020.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that before.
Yeah, no, we haven't. And in fact, you make the point, for the first time, Black losses a smaller percentage than white losses. And then obviously women experience larger losses than men in all groups, but in the Asian community, that's the only one where that did not happen. We also have to acknowledge that when we talk about the share of the prime age population with a job, that is still problematic. For African Americans, it was 75.9% in February, 72.3% in June. For Hispanics, 78% in February of 2020, 73.5% of June in June of 2021. And then for white community, 81.5% in February 2020, 77.9% in June of 2021. So that's still a problem. I don't know how much that changed just in the month of June. I presume not that much. I take it.
Not that much, but there's little jumbling of the order. I mean, the white losses were larger than usual relative to Black and Hispanics, so that the white gap has always been smaller than the Black gap, and this time it's about the same size. I think there's some statistical noise. The pattern has been very consistent, that women have done worse than men, and Black workers and Latino workers have done worse than white workers.
Yeah. More MIP after this message. And again, if we're talking about, and you mentioned the white number being a little worse than before. I mean, obviously we're talking about bringing the economy back. And we're also looking at obviously a lot of hospitality industry jobs. Let's face it, there's a lot of people of color who have those jobs. I'm not saying that's right or that's the way it ought to be. That's just what it is. But yet, many of those people also are those who do not have the higher educational attainment. And so, as you write, 10.1% of those who have less than high school graduation have lost their jobs. Those with just high school education and no college, 7.2% in losses. Some college, 5.9% losses. And then college graduates or higher, 0.7% in losses. So obviously it still makes a difference, folks, when you have that educational attainment.
Absolutely. It's been a consistent pattern that for BA and above, job losses have been much smaller. And I do the comparison to high school graduates. I emphasize that because there's a relatively small number of less than high school graduates in the labor force.
Right.
Just because things have changed over time. A lot of them are older. But a college degree still matters significantly.
Yeah. No, it does make a difference. Also, workers born abroad are disproportionately impacted. If you are a foreign-born worker, then you're at 5.9% below the level of employment you were in February 2020, but only 3.1% for native-born workers in America. And in all of these categories, it's peace with women. I mean, you're still dealing with women being disproportionately affected. And folks, that ought to remind us that pandemic or not, there's still issues of equity and employment in this country. And maybe this is a good opportunity to acknowledge that in this crisis and try to do something about it. And it explodes the myth because, again, we see a lot of these essential workers, see a lot of these hospitality workers, a lot of them are women, but folks, that just the perception is not the reality. Even though we see that and we put people in these categories, something it just still doesn't add up, does it, Chad? The women are still losing more jobs.
They experienced the biggest job losses, and they haven't come back. So their job losses are smaller than they used to be, but they're bigger than men.
Right.
And women of color have it hardest. American society.
Yeah. And we still need unemployment insurance reform, don't we? That's still got to be something that's high on the table.
That is correct. A large number of Republican governors have prematurely ended the fully federally funded unemployment insurance benefits. They're scheduled to run through September 6th at least. Congress may extend them, but these governors decided that unemployment insurance was keeping people from coming back to work, which is not very good evidence for that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things that are holding down people's ability to come back to work, and people are coming back to work. That's the other thing. People are coming back to work, and the real problem is that when the federal programs end, the remaining permanent state unemployment insurance system is way out of date. It was built for an industrial age. It doesn't provide appropriate benefits and coverage to people with shorter work histories or people who have to leave for compelling family reasons. And those tend to be to be workers of color and women, low wage workers. And states after the 2010, after the recession, the Great Recession in 2010, they started to cut back on benefits. They made it harder to get benefits. They tightened eligibility. And some states cut back the number of weeks of unemployment insurance benefits you could get from the standard of 26. And we have to make sure that that doesn't happen again, making the bad system even worse, but that we go in the opposite direction and that we establish a standard number of weeks of 26. We have eligibility requirements that capture people who've truly lost their jobs through no fault of their own, which is what the system is supposed to provide for, and that benefit levels are adequate. That's the fight going forward.
And a fight that must be fought, folks, if we're going to climb all the way out of this and get people's needs met in the way that they should be met. We invite you to go to centeronbudget.org to find out more. And don't forget, follow Chad of the Twitter threads at ChadCBPP to keep up with all he's doing. And again, they've got all the great charts there. So you can see graphically what is happening with what is, for now, we do acknowledge is a comeback, still a ways to go. Chad predicting that if this number stays in this range, 750,000 or up for the next number of months, we could restore jobs, employment to the pre-pandemic level of February 2020. So we will see if that can happen. Chad, as always, buddy, great to have you on, man.
Good to be on. Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.